never belonged in that room. Not really. Not with the men in tailored suits, the cigars, the thick silence that came with too many secrets and too little air. It was like stepping into a church where God had been replaced by power. A long marble table stretched across the room, gleaming under the cold glow of overhead lights. Nico Castorelli sat at the head, his hands folded, black suit sharp enough to cut. He didn't need to raise his voice or even move to remind everyone who ran this city. I walked in quietly, clutching the latest report in my hand, heart fluttering the way it always did when I was near him. I kept my head down like I always did, and placed the folder beside his untouched drink. I barely whispered, "Sir," and turned to go. I didn't make it 2 steps before it happened. Fingers brushed against the small of my back. Light, almost playful, but I froze anyway. Every part of me went still. Not because it hurt. Not because it was overt. But because of what it meant. That someone felt entitled enough to reach out and touch me in this room, in his presence, like I was just something to pass around. I took in a sharp breath and said nothing. I didn't need to, because Nico looked up, and the room fell silent like a switch had been flipped. No chairs moved. No pages turned. No one even exhaled. Just the sound of his voice, cold and calm and cutting through the air like a blade. "Who touched you?" 3 words. That's all it took. Every man at the table stiffened. I stood still like a rabbit in a room full of wolves, but his eyes didn't leave mine. He wasn't asking for gossip. He wasn't demanding an answer. He already knew. His gaze shifted once, to the man on his left, Dario, the one who always smiled too long and joked too loud. And then Nico stood. Not in anger, not rushed. Just slowly, deliberately, like a storm rising over calm water. He walked around the table with death in his eyes and silence behind every step. Dario started to say something, some pathetic protest halfway between laughter and denial. But it didn't matter. Nico didn't even let the sentence finish. He grabbed Dario by the collar and slammed his head into the table. The sound of bone on marble echoed through the room. Blood smeared across the open report I had just handed him. No one moved. No one dared. Nico crouched low beside him, not even out of breath, his voice a low whisper I could barely hear. "Did she ask you to touch her?" Dario tried to speak, some sputter of apology, but Nico's fist crashed into his face before the words could form. I flinched. Everyone else stayed silent. "You don't touch what's mine," Nico said. My breath caught in my throat. Mine. He said it like it meant something. Like I wasn't just the girl who brought his coffee or answered his calls or scheduled his brutal, endless meetings. His hand was still bleeding when he turned to face me, but his eyes weren't angry anymore. They were soft. Fiercely soft. The kind of look you give someone you'd kill for, not just protect. He stepped closer, lifted my wrist, and gently, without saying a word, checked my pulse. It was racing. Of course it was. But he didn't mock me. Didn't smirk. Just held my hand like I was something breakable. "You're done for the day," he said, his voice lower now. I tried to speak, to protest, to tell him I was fine, but he cut me off gently. "Go." Not a command this time. A warning almost. For everyone else in the room. When I turned to leave, I felt it. Every man looking away from me now. Not one dared meet my eyes. Not one breathed too loud. The message had been sent loud and clear. I wasn't just the secretary anymore. And after tonight, the whole city would know exactly what I was to Nico Castorelli. By the time I came in the next morning, the air inside the office felt different. It wasn't spoken out loud. Not in words. But I could feel it. In the way men who never used to look at me now refused to meet my eyes. In the way the receptionist didn't ask me to sign in like she always did. In the way the elevator that usually made me wait 10 minutes was already open, like it was waiting for me. It was subtle. But that's how fear works in this world, and Nico had made sure they were afraid. I stepped into the hallway with quiet steps, clutching the same coffee order I always brought. He took it black, no sugar. Never asked for it, never thanked me for it. But every time I set it on his desk, I saw the corner of his mouth twitch, like the act meant more than he wanted to admit. The hallway leading to his office was empty, which was strange. Usually there were 2 guards, 1 assistant, and 1 overpaid strategist pacing with a file in hand. But now, silence. And then his door opened, and there he was. Nico Castorelli, black shirt unbuttoned at the throat, sleeves rolled to the elbows, jaw freshly shaven, but eyes dark with something that hadn't slept. His gaze locked on mine like I was already inside his thoughts. "Come in," he said. Voice low. I did. I always did. His office was colder than usual. The curtains were drawn. His desk was clean. No files, no papers, no signs of the empire he usually commanded from behind it. Just a glass of whiskey half finished and one photo. My ID badge. The one that clipped to my chest every day. It was lying in the center of the desk like evidence. He closed the door behind me, locked it. "I'm not firing you," he said before I could panic. I blinked. "I didn't ask." "No," he murmured. "But you were ready for it." "I saw it in your face." I stepped forward, but only a little. "You made a scene last night. One that'll haunt both of us." He leaned back against the door, arms crossed. "I made a promise. You made a claim." I swallowed, voice tightening. "And now I'm the woman the Mafia boss snapped for." He didn't flinch. "Good. It's not good." "Nico, it's dangerous." He pushed off the door and crossed the room in 2 long steps until he stood directly in front of me. "What's dangerous is a man thinking he can touch you and laugh about it," he said. Softer now, as if fury didn't have to be loud to destroy everything in its path. My voice cracked. I've spent years trying not to be seen, trying to be invisible. That's how women like me survive in places like this. "And what are you now?" he asked, stepping closer still. "Marked." The word slipped out like a secret I hadn't meant to say. He heard it, felt it. His jaw tightened, and his hand came up, slowly, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "You were marked long before I touched him," he said. "You just didn't know it," my heart thudded. "Why me? There are 100 women in this city you could have hired. Smart ones. Beautiful ones. Ones who know how to survive men like you." His eyes searched mine like he was trying to decide how much of me he could handle. "I didn't want someone who knows how to survive men like me," he whispered. "I wanted someone who didn't think I was beyond saving." I looked away, because the moment I looked back, I would break. He took the coffee from my hand and set it aside, gently, like it wasn't the real reason I came. Then he reached for me again, slow, patient, and slid his fingers against my waist, like he was waiting for me to stop him. I couldn't. His hand settled just above my hip, possessive, protective, terrifying. "Shouldn't feel this way," he said, voice ragged now. "Not about anyone. Not about you. I know. But if anyone touches you again..." "I know." His forehead rested against mine. We stood there, not kissing, not speaking, just breathing, our chests rising like we shared one heartbeat now. Then he whispered, "I'm not sorry I did it." "I'm not either," I said, even though I wished I was. He pulled back, eyes falling to my lips for 1 second too long. Then he stepped away, the kind of step that costs a man something. "Sit," he said, nodding to the chair across from his desk. "There's something I need to show you." I sat. He opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, pushed it toward me. I opened it and stopped breathing. Inside were photos of me, taken at night. Walking home, entering my apartment, leaving the office, some old, some recent, all distant, all watched. My fingers trembled. "Who took these?" I whispered. "Someone who wants to hurt you." My mouth went dry. "Is this why you..." "Yes," he said. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wasn't sure you'd let me protect you if you knew how real it was." My voice dropped to a whisper. "Is it real now?" He sat down across from me, leaned forward, and said, "It's real enough that from now on, you're not walking home. You're not eating alone. You're not anywhere I'm not. And if I refuse..." He smiled faintly. "You won't?" And I didn't. Because deep down, I knew he was right. This wasn't just about a moment anymore. It was a war, and I'd just become Nico Castorelli's most guarded secret, or his greatest weakness. Maybe both. For 3 days, I didn't go home, not because he ordered me, because I didn't want to. He gave me a room at the estate, far from the men and the meetings, far from the walls that heard too much. It was quiet. Too quiet, maybe, but there was something gentle about it. Like a corner of the world he hadn't let the violence touch. The first night, I sat by the window for hours, watching the city lights burn like distant stars. Every time a shadow moved past the garden wall, my heart leapt. Every sound made me hold my breath. But nothing came. No one came. Because Nico had posted 4 men outside my room without telling me. I found out only because I opened the curtains and saw one of them standing under the lamplight, his hands behind his back like a soldier guarding a queen he couldn't look at. Nico didn't say anything about it. He didn't have to. The second night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were too loud, my skin too tight. I kept seeing those photos, the ones of me, walking, breathing, living without knowing eyes had been on me the whole time. I felt exposed in a way no walls could fix. So I got out of bed, pushed the door open, and walked barefoot down the hall until I found the only door I'd never been inside. His. I stood there, hand hovering, unsure whether to knock, but then it opened. Nico stood there in a black t-shirt, hair messy, eyes heavy. He didn't speak, just looked at me like he already knew why I'd come. I couldn't sleep, I said. Voice small. Me neither, he replied. He stepped back without a word, and I walked in. His room was nothing like I expected. No velvet, no decadence. Just clean lines, dark colors, and quiet music playing low from a speaker in the corner. A record, maybe. Jazz, soft and aching. He walked to the bar and poured 2 fingers of something amber into a glass, then set it on the table near me. He didn't offer it. Just left it there, like I could take it if I wanted. I'm sorry about the men, he said finally. The guards? He nodded. I didn't want you to feel trapped. I don't. Good. I looked at him. Really looked. Not at the man in the tailored suits or the boss whose name made men flinch. I saw the tired in his shoulders, the weight under his eyes, the tension in his jaw that never relaxed. Do you ever sleep? I asked. He huffed a soft laugh. Not really. Why? Because there's always someone waiting to hurt the people I care about. The room went still. My throat tightened. And who do you care about? He looked at me, the kind of look that leaves bruises. You. The word landed like a stone in my chest. I didn't answer. Couldn't. He walked over slowly, then reached out. Not to touch me, but to hand me something. A small box. I opened it carefully. Inside was my necklace, the one I lost months ago. The one I thought had been stolen. A small silver chain with a single pearl. I had someone find it, he said softly. It mattered to you. I looked up at him confused. Why? Because things matter more when you're the one wearing them. The tears came fast and silent, not because of the necklace, but because he saw me. In all the ways no one else had. Not just the broken pieces, but the quiet ones. The forgotten ones. I don't know what you want from me, I whispered. He took a step closer. Nothing, he said. I just want you safe. I shook my head. That can't be all. It is. Then why do you look at me like that? His voice dropped. Because I'm trying not to want something I can't protect. He was close now. Too close. But I didn't move away. I didn't run. His fingers brushed mine, tentative. Then the side of my jaw. Then lower, trailing down my arm like he was memorizing the shape of me. I'm not good, he said. Barely a whisper. I know. I'm not gentle. I know. And I don't deserve to touch you. I leaned in. Just enough for my forehead to rest against his. But I want you to, I breathed. That broke something. In him. He kissed me. Not like a man who wanted to claim something, but like a man who had nothing left to lose. It wasn't hard. It wasn't rough. It was desperate. Like he was starved for softness. Like he'd waited a lifetime for someone to say they weren't afraid of him. His hands gripped my waist, but not to pull, to steady himself. My hands went to his face, my thumbs brushing the places where tired had taken root. He kissed like a man who didn't know how to stop. And I let him, because I didn't want him to. Because for once in my life, being wanted didn't feel dangerous. It felt like home, and maybe, just maybe, that was even more dangerous than everything else. The next morning, everything felt heavier. I don't know if it was because I woke up in his bed with the scent of him still on my skin, or because I'd finally let myself feel something I'd buried for so long. Either way, when I sat up, the world outside the window seemed quieter, like it was holding its breath. Nico wasn't there. The sheets beside me were cold, but folded neatly on the nightstand was a robe, a glass of water, and a note in that unmistakable, precise handwriting. Kitchen. Coffee. You'll be safe before I'm back. Nah, not if I'm back. Not see you later. Just before I'm back. Like he'd already made peace with something I hadn't yet seen coming. I walked barefoot through the long hallway, passing cold marble and heavy doors. The Castorelli estate didn't feel like a home. It felt like a fortress. But this morning, it also felt like a maze. I was somewhere between being hidden and being caged, and I wasn't sure which felt worse. I found the kitchen eventually. It wasn't the one the chefs used downstairs. This was the smaller one tucked behind the west wing. Probably built for someone's wife decades ago, back when Mafia men still pretended to play family. A young guard stood in the doorway. He didn't speak when I walked in, just nodded once and looked away, eyes trained on the window like someone might jump through it at any moment. There was coffee already waiting. Real, rich, dark, made just the way I liked it. I didn't ask how he knew. I just took the cup and sat by the long glass wall that overlooked the side garden. The vines out there were dying. Autumn had pulled their color away, left them tangled and bare. Something about them looked familiar. Worn, stripped down, still standing. I'd only taken 2 sips when my phone buzzed across the counter. I hadn't touched it since yesterday. But now the screen lit up with a message I didn't recognize, a number with no name, just one line. You were easier to find than you thought. The cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. The sound made the guard jump, his hand immediately going to the weapon at his side, but I didn't speak. I couldn't. My heart had already dropped into my stomach. The number wasn't saved, but I knew who it was. I would have known his tone. Anywhere. Jack, my past, my mistake, the man I ran from, and the reason I now lived behind a guarded gate, under a mafia boss's protection. I stood there frozen, hearing his voice even though he wasn't in the room. You'll never be out of my reach. Emily, never. No one will ever love you like I did. And it hit me right then. Jack didn't just want me back. He wanted to break me for belonging to someone else now. He wanted me to suffer for choosing Nico. I left the kitchen, ignoring the guard calling my name. My feet moved faster than my thoughts. I turned corners I barely remembered and found myself back outside Nico's office. But it was empty. Not just empty, cold. Too clean. His chair pushed in, his coat gone. I turned and ran back down the stairs, heart pounding like a warning drum. Then I saw Angelo, standing in the hall, talking to 2 of the guards. When he saw my face, he stepped toward me immediately. What's wrong? I showed him the phone. His eyes darkened. Where did this come from? I don't know. Just now, did you respond? No. Good. He stepped aside and pulled his own phone out. Stay here. No. I want to see him. You'll see him tonight. Angelo. I cut in, voice shaking. He's watching me. Jack. He found me. He looked at me for a long second. Then finally he gave in. He's in the South District. Handling someone who sold out the location of this estate to a third party. I stared. Jack got our address from someone inside? Angelo didn't answer. He didn't have to. That was a yes. I turned toward the exit. Emily, don't do this. I need to see him. I need him to know. Know what? That I'm not afraid of Jack anymore. That's a lie, Angelo said quietly. I stopped. Because it was. But only a little. I wasn't afraid of Jack the way I used to be. Shaking. Apologizing. Trying to shrink so small he wouldn't have anything left to hit. I wasn't that girl anymore. Not since Nico. But I was afraid. Afraid of what Jack would do if he found me first. Afraid of what Nico would become if he got to Jack first. I didn't know which would destroy us faster. That night, Nico returned late, covered in someone else's blood. He didn't say anything when he walked through the door. Just pulled his shirt off, tossed it into the fire like it meant nothing, and sat down on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. I stood behind him, silent. He didn't look at me. You got a message, he said finally. I nodded. I know. I saw it. He finally turned, and his eyes locked with mine, haunted and dark and something worse than angry, scared. For me? I need you to tell me the truth, he said. Okay. If I kill him? If I make him disappear and no one ever finds his body, will you still look at me the way you did this morning? I didn't answer right away, because part of me wanted to say yes. Do it. End him. Burn the world if you have to. But another part of me? It whispered something else. If you become him to protect me, do I lose you anyway? I sat beside him, pressed my forehead to his shoulder, and whispered the only answer that felt honest. I'll still look at you, Nico, but I don't want to lose the version of you that held me like I was soft. His hand came up and curled gently around mine. You'll never lose him, he said. He only exists because of you. And in that quiet, bloody room, we both knew something was coming, something final. And we'd either walk through the fire together or burn trying. I didn't sleep that night, not because I wasn't tired. I was exhausted, down to my bones, but because Nico didn't sleep either. He sat by the window with a glass of untouched whiskey in his hand and shadows under his eyes. He didn't speak much, just watched the trees sway under the wind like they could warn us of something before it arrived. I laid in bed, watching his reflection in the glass, wondering what it would take for a man like him to shatter, and wondering what I would do if I saw it happen. Morning came too fast, and with it, a kind of silence I hadn't felt before. Not peaceful, but suffocating. The guards were tenser. Angelo didn't smile when he passed me in the hallway. Even the staff kept their heads down, eyes flicking over their shoulders like something had shifted just out of view. And maybe it had. Because by midday, Nico's mood had darkened into something I couldn't reach. He pulled me into his office. Not gently, but not roughly either, just urgently. Emily, he said, voice low and sharp. You can't stay here anymore. The words hit like ice. I blinked. What? Pack what you need. You're leaving before nightfall. No, I'm not. I'm not running again. You're not running. You're disappearing. My chest tightened. That's the same thing. He stood there, eyes wild, jaw clenched like he was holding back a storm. Then he walked to the table, picked up a folded envelope, and handed it to me. I opened it slowly. Inside was a photo. It was me. Yesterday, in the estate garden, laughing, looking up at the sky. Someone had taken it from behind the hedges, from inside the walls. I swallowed hard, my hand shaking as I stared down at the proof. He's in here. Nico didn't answer, because we both knew. Someone had let him in. A betrayal, a threat. A warning. I looked up at him, barely breathing. Who else knows? Just me. And now you. What are you going to do? He turned away, walking toward the window, fingers flexing like he wanted to put them through the glass. I've already done it. I stood up. What does that mean? It means he's not going to make it out of here a second time. Nico, I told you! He growled, spinning around, his eyes blazing with something terrifying. I told you that if anyone touched you, I'd ruin them. And now he's here. Laughing at us, watching you like you still belong to him. His voice cracked. I'm not going to let that happen. I can't. I stepped forward, closing the space between us. You're scaring me. I should. No. I grabbed his hand, held it against my chest so he could feel my heartbeat thudding wildly. This isn't who you are with me. Don't become him to stop him. He stared at me like I was the only thing tethering him to solid ground. I already have, he said. And it shattered something in me, because I could see it, behind his fury. Behind all that violence boiling just beneath the surface was a man unraveling from the inside out. A man who didn't know how to love without losing pieces of himself. And he was losing them for me. I let go of his hand and walked to the door. Not because I was leaving, but because I needed air, space, anything. That's when I saw it. Angelo, standing outside the office, his face pale, his hand on his weapon. He looked at Nico, then at me. And then he said the words that ripped the ground out from under us. He's in the house. My breath caught. Nico didn't even flinch. Where? Basement entrance. North wing. We locked it down. But he's inside. I turned to Nico, panic rushing in like a flood. How? He paid someone, Nico said flatly. We'll find out who later. Right now, I need you out of this hallway. But I didn't move, because I knew what came next. This wasn't a warning. It wasn't a message. This was war. Nico looked at Angelo. Take her to the safe room. I'm not going, I said. You are, Nico barked, louder than I'd ever heard him. No, I'm not, I snapped back. If he wants to hurt me, he'll find a way. Locking me up won't stop him. I'm not hiding anymore. Nico looked like he wanted to scream, or throw something, or kiss me so hard I'd forget my own name. But instead, he walked over, grabbed my face between his hands and whispered, "If something happens to you, Emily, I'll burn this entire city to the ground." "Then don't let anything happen to me," I whispered back. He stared at me for one more second, then turned to Angelo. "Bring him to the interrogation room." "You're not going to kill him?" Angelo asked. "I'm going to make him wish I had." And just like that, Nico Castorelli, the man who kissed me like I was the last good thing in his world, walked out of the room with blood in his heart and my name in his hands. And I sat down on the cold floor, clutching the photo that proved the past was still inside these walls, wondering if I'd still have a future when this day was done. Time didn't move after Nico left the room. Not really. It twisted, bent, crawled over my skin like something poisonous. The safe room was just down the hall. Angelo kept trying to steer me there like I was a broken piece of glass he was afraid to drop. But I didn't go. I sat on the stairs instead, in silence, my hands clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just listened. For footsteps. For shouts. For gunshots. For his voice. I thought I'd hear Jack first. I thought he'd yell or try to run, but it wasn't his voice I heard, it was Nico's, low, controlled, cold in a way that only came from fury too deep to scream. "Do you know what I've done to men who've touched her?" I couldn't hear Jack's response. Just the scrape of metal against the concrete floor. A grunt, something hitting the wall. I didn't ask Angelo to tell me what was happening. I didn't need to. The way he stood, stiff, jaw tight, hand near his weapon but not on it, told me this wasn't a threat. It was a reckoning. And I'd started it. Maybe not with my hands, but with my presence. My fear, my decision to stop hiding. "He's not going to kill him," Angelo muttered eventually. "Not unless you say it's what you want." I looked at him slowly. "Why would that matter?" "Because you're the only thing that could bring him back from what he's about to become." I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure I wanted to bring him back. Some sick part of me. The part still carrying bruises from years ago. The part that still woke up gasping from the sound of Jack's name. Wanted Nico to lose control. Wanted Jack to know what it felt like to be hunted, but that was the part of me Jack had built, and I wasn't hers anymore. I stood up without warning and started walking. "Where are you going?" Angelo called after me. To end it, the guards didn't stop me. They parted as soon as they saw my face. Maybe it was the way I walked. Or maybe it was because they'd already seen the kind of man Nico became when it came to me. And maybe they were afraid of me now, too. I reached the basement hallway and opened the heavy door. The room beyond was dim. Concrete walls. Steel chains. A single hanging bulb that flickered every time someone moved too fast. Jack was on the floor, bleeding from the mouth, tied at the wrists. Still alive, but barely. Nico stood a few feet away, breathing hard, hands stained red, his shirt soaked through with sweat and blood. He didn't see me at first, but Jack did. And when our eyes met, he smiled, that same sick smile I remembered from the worst nights. "Well," he rasped, "look who finally stopped running." I froze for a heartbeat, but only one. Then I stepped closer. I could feel Nico stiffen when he realized I was there. He turned to stop me, but I held up a hand. "No," I said. "I need to say this." Jack laughed, coughing blood. "Gonna thank me for making you strong?" "No," I whispered. "I'm going to bury you with the truth." He squinted at me. "What truth?" "That you didn't break me. You just delayed who I was meant to become." "You think he loves you?" He sneered, nodding toward Nico. "He's worse than me. He just wears prettier suits." I smiled softly. "You don't know what love looks like." "But I do now." "Sure," Jack hissed. "Until he gets bored. Until you disappoint him. Then we'll see." "I disappointed you by surviving," I said. That was always the problem. Jack fell silent, because he knew I was right. I turned to Nico. He looked wrecked, not from the fight, not from the blood, but from me standing there, watching the darkest part of him breathe. "I didn't ask for this," I said quietly. "I know, but I'm not going to stop it." His breath hitched. I walked over and put my hand on his chest. His heart was beating so fast, I could feel it through his ribs. "You're not like him," I whispered. "Because you asked for my permission before you became a monster." He dropped his head, pressing his forehead to mine. "What do I do now?" He breathed. "You finish it." But not for me. For a moment, I thought he might pull away. That maybe the part of him that used to be a boy with a mother and a heart still wanted to believe in mercy. But when he looked down at Jack again, it was gone. He didn't kill him. He didn't need to. He left Jack chained to the wall, alive, bruised, and broken, and handed the consequences over to the law in a language only men like him could speak. It wasn't about justice. It was about ownership. It wasn't about justice. It was about ownership. Jack didn't leave that room with a body bag over his head, but he left knowing he'd never touch power, and or me, again. And as Nico wrapped a blanket around my shoulders that night and whispered nothing but my name over and over like a prayer, I finally let myself believe. The war was ending, and somehow, I had survived it. The house was too quiet. Not the good kind of quiet, not the soft, sleepy kind you wrap yourself in like a blanket. No. This was the kind that made your stomach twist and your heart wait for a sound that didn't come. The kind that meant something wasn't over. I stayed curled up in Nico's bed, his warmth still clinging to the sheets, but the ache in my chest kept me awake. He hadn't come back upstairs since he left me with the guards. I'd watched the sun set and rise again without him beside me, and no one told me anything. It wasn't until I went downstairs myself, barefoot, silent, still wearing yesterday's bruises like perfume, that I found Angelo standing outside Nico's office with a look on his face I hadn't seen before. "Is he okay?" I asked. Angelo nodded slowly. "He's fine," but his eyes didn't match the word. "What is it?" Angelo hesitated, then looked at the door. "There's someone inside," I stared. "Inside his office?" "He came this morning. Says he's family," I blinked, confused. "Nico doesn't have family," Angelo sighed. "He didn't, until now." I pushed past him before he could stop me and opened the door. And there he was. Nico, standing with his back to me, his shoulders tight, his jaw clenched so hard I could see it from across the room. And sitting in front of him, too calm, too collected, with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes, and was a man in a sharp navy suit, clean-shaven, confident, familiar in a way I couldn't place. They both turned when I entered. Nico's eyes softened the second he saw me, just slightly, but the tension never left his body. The man stood and smiled like we were being introduced at a dinner party. "So you're the girl," he said smoothly. I didn't reply. "Emily?" Nico said, voice low. "This is Marco," the man interrupted. "Half-brother. Surprise." I froze. It felt like the floor tilted under me. "You never told me you had a brother," I said. "Because I didn't know," Nico replied, still staring at Marco like he didn't trust him to breathe in the same room. "Dad was busy with other women too," Marco said, grinning. "But I didn't come here for that. I came to talk business." Nico didn't speak, and that silence was louder than a threat. Marco turned to me again, smile fading a little. "You've got him wrapped around your little finger, huh?" "I think you should leave," I said quietly, but he didn't move. Instead, he stepped closer, and for a split second, I saw something in his eyes that made my skin crawl. Something Jack used to carry when no one else was. Looking. That same entitled gleam. The kind that said, "I want it because it's yours." Marco wasn't just here to reconnect. He was here to challenge Nico. And I was the sharpest weapon on the table. "She's not part of this," Nico said, voice cold now. "Say what you came to say and leave." Marco looked at me once more, just long enough to make my skin burn, and then turned back to Nico. "I want in." "You're not getting in." "Come on." "Brother," Marco said, too casually. "We share blood. And after what you did to Jack, there's a power vacuum. People are watching you. They're wondering if you've gone soft." Nico's hand twitched. "I made an example of Jack," he said. "You want me to make one of you too?" Marco chuckled. "I'm not Jack. I don't hurt women. I just want what's fair." "You're not getting it." Marco leaned forward. "You'd really go to war. Over her?" Nico stepped around the desk so fast that Marco didn't even have time to flinch before Nico had grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. "This isn't about her," Nico hissed. It's about you thinking you can walk in here, flash a last name you never earned, and take what I built. She's not a weakness. She's the reason I haven't burned you alive yet. I didn't move, didn't speak. I watched. Because for the first time, I saw it clearly. Nico wasn't just dangerous, he was uncontrollable when it came to me. And that terrified people like Marco, because it meant I had more power than they did. Without even trying. Nico released him slowly, shoving him back. And Marco straightened his jacket like he wasn't shaking. "I'll be back," he muttered. "With lawyers. With papers." "I'm blood," Nico didn't respond. He just turned to me, and in his eyes was a flicker of something deeper than anger. Something like fear. Not for himself. For me. As Marco left, I walked to him slowly and rested a hand against his chest. "You okay?" "No," he whispered. "Because he's smarter than Jack. More patient. And he doesn't want to kill me." I looked up at him. "What does he want?" Nico looked down at me like I was the answer and the threat all at once. "He wants you." I didn't sleep that night either. I laid beside him in the dark. Nico's breathing steady but tense, his hand resting on my waist like if he let go. The whole world might rip me from him. But even in the warmth of his bed, even in the strength of his arms, I felt the chill of something unfinished. Something closing in. Marco's words haunted the corners of my mind. "I'll be back." With lawyers? With papers. I'm blood. He didn't want the business. Not really. Not the empire, the risks, the wars. He wanted the one thing Nico couldn't share. Me, and men like Marco didn't fall in love. They claimed, possessed, destroyed. By morning, the estate was buzzing. Extra guards. Phone calls whispered behind closed doors. Nico left the room without a word, and I didn't ask him where he was going. I already knew. He was drawing lines in the dirt, gathering names, counting bullets, preparing for war, again. But this time, the enemy wore the same last name, and for the first time since all of this began. I wondered if Nico would survive what came next. It wasn't just Marco, it was the idea of Marco. A man who knew how to play clean in a dirty world. Who smiled at your enemies while shaking your hand. Who didn't need to touch a woman to break her, just remind her how fragile the people she loved could be. I stayed in the sunroom most of the day, surrounded by quiet and the scent of lemon trees. I tried to read, tried to distract myself, but I couldn't stop thinking about what Marco had said. People are watching. They're wondering if you've gone soft. He wasn't just talking about Nico's feelings. He was talking about me. The girl who walked into this world as a nobody, and now sat at the center of it like a secret everyone wanted to control. I should have been afraid, but instead, I felt something stronger, anger, because I wasn't weak. I wasn't a weakness, and I wasn't going to be used, not by Jack, not by Marco, not by anyone who thought my softness made me small. By sunset, I'd made my decision. Nico came to me in the study, his shirt half unbuttoned, tension carved into his face like a shadow. He didn't kiss me. He didn't say my name. He just sat across from me and waited. "You're going to kill him, aren't you?" I asked. "If I have to," he said. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. "What if I told you I had another way?" He stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. "Emily, I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you I know how to end this. Without blood. Without another body in the ground." He looked like he wanted to say no. To protect me from whatever plan I'd stitched together in my head. But I wasn't the girl in his office anymore. Wasn't the secretary who flinched when someone touched her. I was the woman who'd survived Jack, who'd survived being watched, hunted, almost broken. I was the reason Nico had changed, and now it was my turn to save him. "Let me meet him," I said. "No. In public. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere safe. No. Let me finish this." He stood up, pacing, running both hands through his hair. "You don't know what men like him do." "I do," I snapped. "I've known my whole life." Silence stretched, and then, finally, he nodded. A single tortured nod, and the next day at a rooftop restaurant surrounded by windows, cameras, and public eyes. I sat across from Marco Castorelli in a white dress and a red coat, my voice calm, my hands still. "You don't want me," I said. He laughed. "Don't I?" "No, you want to beat him." "And you think I'm the prize?" His smile faltered. "You're wrong," I said. Because if you lay a single finger on me, if you even try, I'll make sure every name you shook hands with hears what kind of man you really are. You won't inherit anything. Not this business. Not the respect. Not even your own last name," his jaw clenched. "You think people will believe you?" "They'll believe me when I show them the copy of your offshore account transactions," I whispered. "The ones you tried to use to bribe the men inside Nico's house. The ones I hacked last night." He froze. I smiled, softly. "I'm not just the secretary anymore." He stared at me, pale now, and in that moment, and for the first time, Marco looked scared. I stood up and left him there, surrounded by people who would never know how close he came to destroying something real. When I got back to the car, Nico was waiting in the driver's seat. He didn't say anything as I slid in beside him, just reached over and took my hand. And for once, he looked at me like I was something more than soft, something dangerous, something his. We drove back to the estate in silence. No more wars. No more ghosts. Just the sound of our breath and the quiet understanding that we'd made it out, together, and maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one who'd been saved. Because in the end, Nico Castorelli didn't need a soldier beside him. He needed a woman who could bring him back from the edge. And now, he had one forever. From the edge. And now, he had one forever.